Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Antigua's Prime Minister says investor interest from as far as Africa for new LIAT. This story takes the lead in our 923rd edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 19th August 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown says while the situation with the cash-strapped regional airline LIAT remains tenuous, it could resume flights to some destinations even as the administrator continues his work as part of the reorganization of the airline. Brown, who has been against any plans to liquidate LIAT 1974 Limited, said interest is being shown in the airline by investors, some as far away as Africa. Last month, Brown told the Caribbean Media Corporation that a decision had been taken that would allow St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados to turn over their shares in LIAT to Antigua and Barbuda for $1 EC each. The other shareholder, Dominica, has said it supports the efforts to reorganize LIAT, even as it provides licenses to other carriers to serve the island. According to the new reorganizational plan, a copy of which has been obtained by the CMC, Antigua and Barbuda is proposing reinvestment of $108 million, with Antigua indicating that under the new plan, it is prepared to underwrite up to 50% of the required capitalization. The new capital invested during reorganization will be protected in that it will rank in priority above all creditors in the unlikely event of liquidation, it said, noting that the remaining $54 million is to be shared by other private and public sector entities, including existing shareholder governments. Brown said investors from as far as Africa have expressed an interest in the reorganized LIAT. Over in Kingstown, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has described as hilarious the recent travel advisory issued by the United States telling its citizens to avoid non-essential travel to Caribbean Community CARICOM countries, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines. What is laughable, though, is that the United States put out an advisory. The thing is hilarious. I mean, like it's Comedy Central. Imagine the United States of America. Their authorities said you must have an advisory to all the CARICOM countries that you must go only if it's essential travel, all except Haiti and Guyana, and I think Suriname, said Gonsalves, who also chairs the 15-member regional integration grouping. Speaking on the state-owned NBC radio, Gonsalves also noted that the bulletin also advises against travel to Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, all these countries which are doing quite well. Gonsalves made the comment after noting the impact of COVID-19 on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which as of Saturday had recorded 57 cases of the viral infection, 55 of whom have recovered. He told radio listeners that there have been no COVID-related deaths in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and that 2 people who were placed at the state-run isolation facility were so warded because of recalcitrance rather than severe illness. He contrasted this to the United States, which took 99 days to reach its first 1 million cases and another 16 days to record 4 million cases. In other news, Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir Hilary Beckles, has called on the Jamaica government, the private sector and civil society to give teachers the tools needed to bridge the digital divide. After the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools were forced to offer the delivery of lessons online. However, students and teachers have been faced with challenges due to a digital divide caused by poor internet service and the inability to afford internet or computer devices. Jamaica's future is really in the hands of everyone who walks into the classroom, said Sir Hilary. He further added that there is no need to remove the digital divide by removing access based on income. Let us therefore transform Jamaica. Let us look at how to empower the marginalized children in the rural districts. Let us take every child in the most remote village and bring them forward, empower them. Bring them and the millions of children that we have, young people that we have, empower each and every one. Remove that digital divide. Remove access based on income. Let us create a level playing field for every child, Sir Hilary urged. Sir Hilary was giving a virtual presentation at the opening ceremony of the Jamaica Teachers Association's JTA's 56th annual conference at Montego Bay Convention Center in Rose Hall, St. James on Monday. He also argued that it isn't a shortage of capital holding back the economic growth being pursued, but a shortage of critical skills that are necessary to build a modern, knowledge-driven, information technology-driven, digitally transformed economy. Trinidad and Tobago's Chief Medical Officer Dr. Roshan Parasram says one woman who broke COVID-19 protocols while awaiting her test results has put more than 200 people at risk of infection. More in the CNC3 news item with Charlene Rampasad.
As the nation continues to reel from high numbers of COVID-positive cases daily, the Chief Medical Officer says one woman who broke quarantine could have infected over 200 people. The woman traveled from Trinidad to Tobago after being swabbed for the virus, but before getting her positive result. As of this morning, Tobago had 17 active COVID cases.
As you all know, there was a particular case that would have gone to a hotel in Tobago. Out of that one case in Tobago, we have identified 222 primary, secondary, and tertiary contacts. There are 204 primary contacts from one single case.
Now, Dr. Roshan Parasram says the Ministry of Health is taking no chances with those in quarantine. Once you are swabbed, you must sign a quarantine order. And if you are caught leaving your home, you can be arrested and charged by the police.
If you breach the quarantine order, there are certain legal elements that sit in through the TTPS that can be enforced. So the process has changed as we move further along the continuum of cases. So now we are at the stage that once you are swabbed, you are given the quarantine order, which is a legal document to stay at home rather than trying to just say verbally stay at home so that there's something to enforce if people don't comply.
Meanwhile, Principal Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Naresh Nandram, says when COVID-positive cases are categorized by age, the numbers show younger people are contracting the virus. Dr. Nandram says this trend shows which age groups are flouting the COVID regulations.
The majority of cases in females occur between the ages of 35 to 39, and for males, it's younger than that. It's the 25 to 29-year-olds that, where most of the cases occur. And that's very concerning, and perhaps that's correlated to adherence to the public health guidelines, and that's something that we need to address.
Dr. Nandram says the frontline fight against COVID-19 is now in the hands of the public, as he urged people to continue to wear their masks and social distance. Charlene Rampasad, CNC3 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
The question is asked as to what will happen if COVID-19 cases continue to spike well after the 28-day timeline for the current restrictions in Trinidad and Tobago. CNC3's Bovita Gopalchan reports.
We're looking at viability. Can we stick around? Movie Town might want to hear we're out of business. We have to shut down and try something else again or go somewhere else.
Movie Town Chairman Derek Chin says frequent intermissions in their operations could cause the company to pull the curtains permanently. But it's a stage he's hoping the company will not reach. Since being allowed to reopen in June, Chin notes Movie Town has had a 90% reduction in patrons because no new movies were released. But with Hollywood set to debut new movies by the end of this month, he was anticipating business would have returned to some level of normality. Speaking with CNC3 News via telephone on Monday, Chin said he has met with his attorneys and is drafting a letter with some alternative ideas.
People are quick to say, what are you thinking about is the money and so on. But we have responsibilities. We have loans. We have employees. They have their families. And and it's really a shame that something a little more flexible, a little more trying out isn't tried out, because as I said, we've had no reports, nothing. We followed the rules, and yet if it is that you're still going to close this down when we follow the rules, then you might as well say forget about putting protocols in place.
As for his more than 2,000 employees, Chin says he's meeting with his human resource department to draft a plan on the way forward, as he admits sustaining the current staff level will be difficult.
For 6 months, eight months, employees have to go home. You're going to have a spike in crime because people are going to be obviously suffering.
As for Prestige Holdings Limited, its Chief Executive Officer Simon Hardy says it's too early to tell the extent of the impact for the company.
The brands that is likely to be most impacted is obviously TGI Fridays, which is more of a dine-in concept. But we think that we had already taken measures before to pivot to alternative, what we call convenience-driven channels, that we're looking across all of our brands to see how things are affected. Our main focus is to preserve jobs, whether we can shift people around into other areas.
President of the Trinidad Hotels, Restaurants and Tourism Association, Hassel Toms, notes restaurants have been recording lower sales since the start of the second wave. He says the THRT membership will have to meet to discuss a survival plan. Bhavita Gopal-Chan, CNC3 News.
There is word from Guyana's Deputy Head of Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, CANO, in relation to that recent cocaine bust in Germany. The shipper has been identified. Travis Chase of HGP Nightly News reports.
The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, CANO, is one step closer with its investigation into that recent bust of 1.5 tons of cocaine at a German port. Deputy Head of the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, Leslie Ramlal, reported on Wednesday of the strides made by the anti-drug agency during the investigation.
So what we've known so far about this shipment is that the container originated from Guyana, and yes, it was packed with rice from Guyana. The vessel sailed from Guyana on the 25th of May and went to another country where everything was offloaded, including the container in question. That container stayed in that country for 6 days before being loaded onto another vessel and then onto Germany. So those are the things we're looking at this time. In terms, we know the date, we know the container number, we know the shipper, we know which wharf it was loaded from, we know the ship, and we know the journey or the route of the container. We know that for sure.
Ramlal said that given the substantial estimated street value of the cocaine, a lot of help was involved to move that amount of cocaine across to Germany.
We know the street value locally would be around 1.6 billion Guyana dollars. So to move that amount, and based on what we know here, it's quite a challenge. It will call for a lot of coordination from various people. So we're looking at all angles as the investigation continues to see exactly what transpired with this movement of the narcotics.
A major part of the investigation, according to Ramlal, is the reviewing of CCTV footage.
That is part of our investigations, and once the images are still there, first of all, providing that their surveillance cameras are on and those images are still, because you would appreciate this is in excess of 2 months we're looking at. All right, 25th of May is when the container left Guyana. We don't know at the time when it was scanned, if it was scanned, what day it was scanned, when it went into the wharf. All of that we have to now take into consideration. So there's a lot has to be done to really get down to see exactly what happened, to get to the bottom of it.
Even as the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit aims to completely remove Guyana from being listed among the transshipment points for drugs by 2022, Ramlal says it's discouraging when somebody lets the cocaine pass.
Quite frankly, it's very discouraging. One is because you know you're doing so much. Of course, traffickers will go to any extent to ensure that their commodity gets to wherever destination it's intended for. But it's very discouraging knowing that you're doing so much, but at the same time, you have to keep pushing. You cannot allow that to get you to that extent where you're going to give up. Right? Yes, it's discouraging, it could be frustrating, but you have to keep pushing.
The cocaine bust was made at a German port in a consignment of rice that originated from Guyana. Authorities presumed that the US $355 million worth of cocaine was to be distributed from Poland to bulk buyers all over Europe who would then sell the drugs to street dealers. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.